felt that within India versus, when you compare it with the Western world, the regulator there has always stepped in when the business reached a certain size or the segment or a sector reached a certain size. And I'll give you an example even with mutual funds, right? Way back in 2010 or 11, when we were distributing mutual funds, there was an era of like widespread sales happening with financial institutions selling mutual fund products. SEBI put an upfront ban on upfront fee and actually converted the entire industry overnight into a big loss of revenue. Now, this was unheard of because every single sale deserves an upfront fee. If you look at the Western world, that's how businesses were created. They were getting an upfront commission. So while I agree with you with the fact that you have to get regulated and you have to be cognizant of regulations, India also has this pretty interesting, I would say, dilemma where the way to monetize is also very, very sharply, governed by regulators, and it does not allow the industry to flourish before they put a clamp down on it. Now, whether it was mutual funds, as I gave you an example, whether it's UPI and the MDR associated with it, or the lack of MDR associated with it, we've seen this happen. So, in a way, grey areas were exploited also because there was no legit ways of making money on core payment flows or core sales. What's your view on that?
In studying in NYU back in the day when the 2008 crisis was happening, and I was actually studying under a professor called Rubini, who was called Dr. Doom, famous economist who was quite, ahead of his time, predicting the global financial crisis coming through. And the point is that while we look at America with this, great aura which is around America, my view is honestly that their regulators are quite, there's a lot of conflict of interest. For example, you would have a situation where someone like a Timothy Geithner, who is the head of the New York Fed, becomes the Treasury Secretary, which is a good thing, and then goes on to run a hedge fund. Or for that matter, Robert Rubin, who's a partner in Goldman Sachs, joins the Clinton cabinet
Hank
as
Paulson, classic.
Goldman joins the Clinton administration, repeals Glass-Steagall Act, which results in Sandyville being able to merge Travelers Group with Citibank and create Citigroup, and then becomes the chairman of Citigroup, makes $115 million of compensation over the next 5 years, and Citibank goes belly up and gets a $45 billion bailout. He calls up his own team member, who was Hank Paulson, who was the Treasury Secretary at that time, who was also a partner at Goldman. And this seems to be massive conflicts of interest. The luckiest guy in this whole thing was Hank Paulson, who actually had to sell his stock in Goldman in 2006 at the peak at a tax-free. When you become the Treasury Secretary and you have to sell stock, it's tax-free. So he sold his entire Goldman stake tax-free and walked out without any consequences. So effectively, the fundamental point is that American regulators are deeply conflicted. The second point is that American regulators are completely caught sleeping on the steering. There is a lot of osmosis between Wall Street and the Fed, and the Fed and the Wall Street. They've got legal bribing where you go to the Fed and hire the guy out. It's quite simple. And so there is no regulation till suddenly something blows up. I mean, to imagine that, and look at because they are running basically the currency for the world, whatever they do, actually they don't suffer the consequences. The consequences are suffered by someone sitting in, say, Northern Ireland or, say, Greenland. I mean, the economy of Greenland or Northern Ireland, the banks are shutting down. Why? Because America has a housing finance crisis. This is not something that's sort of normal. So I think regulators have to be slightly ahead of the curve. This whole concept, why did this global financial crisis happen? Because there were people sitting in America wanting to book upfront commission on selling mortgage-backed securities. And mortgage-backed securities was an interesting business because you took home loans, put it in a tranche, and sold it to a pension fund. Pension money was increasing faster than the ability to manufacture mortgage-backed securities. So these lenders, investment banks went to lenders and said, you give loans to anyone, I want to create this because I am getting a profit selling this garbage to pension funds. And so this product started getting sold. And that's how, so if you see the profits of, say, Citi, Goldman, Morgan, all these large banks from 2003 till 2007 was more like the profit growth that you would see for a Google or a Facebook. Indian regulators have been generally better. What has now happened is, the regulators are viewing fintechs with suspicion, with great degree of suspicion, which I think is slightly counterproductive, because what fintechs, while there is a lot of regulators think that there are problems, but fundamentally today the entire payment network in the country is possible because fintechs have raised capital and deployed infrastructure at every point of sale. Today we can speak of digital India not because ICICI Bank or HDFC Bank has made digital India, but because, say, a Google Pay or even a Paytm or a Phone Pay have gone and put QR codes everywhere. So those things have happened, and there is the same thing with the lending space as well, where there are a lot of unserved people which banks are not willing to serve. So there is a place for these lenders, but the problem is that there is the central banks and the regulators also need to realize that not all fintechs are sort of playing this regulatory arbitrage. There's a lot of open market which is there, which banks are not able to service at all with their costs and their structure. So that's the play that fintechs have to rebrand with regulators as well.
In fact, Daniel, the question you asked is the fundamental problem with fintechs. Like, this is the exact problem. Second World War, Bretton Woods, dollar standard linked to gold, Nixon took out gold. If you see dollar supply, post that, it shot up because US is exporting inflation to the entire world. What happened in pandemic, $10 trillion, right? That's a market we should never look at for any parallels. Because if I were to ask, at least Aparajit mentioned about Glass-Steagall, if I ask you name one law of US, you wouldn't be able to tell. There's no privacy law. Antitrust works in mysterious ways. There's a 1940 investment advisors law, but I don't know what laws, except for OFAC and, your FATF is not theirs. But, they have exported laws because it benefits. Not to make a geopolitical statement, right?
Sure.
But the short point is there is no business model that one can... What is happening is people are copying business models, trying to import them in a reality which is completely different. And, if you go to forget China, you go to Vietnam and try and implement those models. You can't even do this in Singapore. Forget Vietnam. Because there is a platform business model, right? There's a plug model. Point is, if something blows up, it's a buyer beware as a concept. Now, at some level, even we have a buyer beware, but they have the ability of printing dollars and plugging the gap.
Yeah.
At least, we don't have the ability. The whole bank cleanup, if you see the financial cost of it, right?
Yeah.
So fundamentally speaking, I think, this is also... one needs to realize what is the rules of the game, right? You cannot hound people. What has gone wrong with the industry? The whole Chinese loan app issue, the whole collection problem, that, I will call your father, mother, spouse to say, give my money back, right? Usurious lending rates in terms of going beyond the benchmark. Lending without a license. People talk about NBFCs. There's a colonial law, 1908, which says anybody who lends has to have a license from local collector. Today, if I'm not falling within the exempt categories, I cannot give you a lend for a coupon. I cannot give you principal for coupon. It's not just NBFC 50/50 test. You don't have today, I don't know who to call. I had a bit of a phishing attack 10 days ago. I didn't know I had to price myself appear before the branch. I mean, I'm talking about at this level. One doesn't know what to do. Forget about, I'm not even getting on the education literacy. I'm talking about people like us.
Yeah.
Right? So, point I'm making is unless you try and be a customer, wear the hat of a customer and build systems accordingly, I won't even go down the AI. So, point I'm making is you, if you look at what's gone wrong, it was an open shut, it had to go wrong. At least in US, in Western market, there is a race divide and there is a common language. The maturity levels I feel are 3 degrees. From a bus driver to a CEO, it's 3 degrees only. Here we have 30 maturity levels. 30. Because if you see, actually, we are kind of, no, I'm not commenting on behind or ahead. It's a very different ecosystem. What works, in fact, the other thing very often we see when we interact with global clients and legal advisors, people don't look at India anymore. They look at India as a continent. The business strategy that works in a Gujarat won't work in a Maharashtra, won't work in a Tamil Nadu, won't be in Kerala. There's no one model.
There's no one size fits all. Yeah, true. No, I agree. And I think you guys summed it up really beautifully that finally the regulator's role is to protect consumer interest. And if it comes at the cost of, as you said, it comes at the cost of not allowing, these kind of businesses to flourish so fast, so soon, because you want to protect the underlying customer, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I remember reading about it that it's not one India, it's 1,000 Indias, maybe just in Bangalore. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess that's that.